I have a few questions, and I was trying to see how we're doing in time. But actually, I would try to phrase it as a one question to everybody, which is, what sort of is the boundary condition for when this kinds of crowdsourcing platforms sort of stop working? Or what are the kind of problems that you think your exemplar mechanisms are unlikely to be used for and most likely to be used for?
Should I start?
Yeah.
So we have a really specific point of view. I think crowdsourcing can do a lot of things that CrowdFlower doesn't do. But we really like to work on tasks where there's a clear notion of quality. So for example, we don't do logo design because it's not clear what it means to make a really great logo. And we don't do kind of ideation, like I think a lot of people in crowdsourcing do, where you want like lots of opinions. We like contain tasks with a clear notion of right or wrong.
And by clear, you mean accepted by everybody, both solution providers and solution seekers?
Yeah, where you can define it. So it's okay if there's some ambiguity in like the first set of instructions, but then we try to work with, we try to make mechanisms where the people doing the work and the people requesting the work actually talk to each other and clarify what they mean by a correct answer.
Great.
Yeah, I can give an example actually that happened today. So we're asking people what's the name of Neil Armstrong's spouse. And the answers were actually generated automatically. So one of them was Gemini spaceship, the other was Laika, and the third option was none of the above, or I don't know. So people look at that and they say, definitely it's not Gemini spaceship, definitely it's not Apollo. So this Laika thing seems like a woman's name. It's related to space. I have heard something. So we had 37 people selecting Laika out of 2 that selected none of the above. What happens is that there are no statistical technique can fix that. We tried everything. So there are biases that people have. They feel that something is obviously a correct answer. So when you have such cases where the crowd or people in general obviously believe something to be correct, while it is not, and the truth is in the minority, then these are the cases where you can fail and fail very spectacularly.
Interesting one.
So we're about to put on Google that if you type Neil Armstrong wife, you will get Laika.
You should use CrowdFlower.
Can you talk her into a name change? Yeah, I mean, so I think I sometimes think of Odesk as people are trying to find employment-like relationships. So it's not a clear sort of boundary of the firm question, which you might kind of think of crowdsourcing as. But I do think that the sort of people do weigh the costs and benefits of outsourcing something or finding a freelancer, and it usually comes down to like, how much time is it going to take me to describe this task? How much of this kind of work do I have? Does it make sense to create this relationship? So I think people are kind of viewing it as a weighing the costs and benefits of
it's the
decision.
Investment required.
Yeah.
Well, let's open it up. Thanks for great answers. The gentleman in the back.
Can you kind of talk about the level of complexity that the tasks that can be crowdsourced can go for? I'll give an example, like picking the name for something is a very short and simple task, even though it requires probably a human brain, right? But going through a long list of things to accomplish a goal might be more complicated. Where is the good point at which you want to limit the complexity and length of the tasks?
I could take that. So the way I look at it is I don't think there's like a practical. There's not a intrinsic limit on the complexity that you can have, as long as you have a clear notion of is this correct or not correct. But there is kind of a practical limit. Like I think that if you are putting stuff in our system, and I know this really well, right? So customers ask all the time, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? I think what you should think about is the amount of task-specific training that you're going to need to do for that person is now going to have to happen for every person that comes into the system. So, if you have one task and the training takes, if you have 10 tasks and the training takes tons of time, you might as well just get one person and have that person do all 10 of the tasks, right? And so I think that's better done on a platform like Odesk, where you find like one person and have that relationship with them. But if you have thousands of tasks and the task-specific training is short, then it makes a lot of sense to use our system. So if it's like a set of skills that someone might just have, like being able to read Japanese equivalent of SEC filings, right? You can actually find those people, and maybe you don't need to do a lot of task-specific training. But if you have something that's really unique to you, I think the more complicated and unique something is to you, the more incentive you have to kind of draw that person into your company, right? Like if you're always going to have to do this complicated thing over and over, you probably want to get a real employee to do that every day.
Hi, my question is, how do you see this affecting traditional labor, and is it driving firms away from hiring people to just crowdsource a lot of their work?
Okay. I think it's quite the opposite, actually. Once people realize that they can automate, systematize, and manage large amounts of people through a crowdsourcing process, they can hire thousands of people, and they don't feel, worried about how to manage this crowd. There are many, many companies that have internal, let's call them crowdsourcing projects. Effectively, they get a lot of people that are doing clerical work, but they are supervised by machines. They are not supervised by other people anymore. And this scales up very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the question comes down to is, how much of the work that's done like this is work that wouldn't have been done anyway, and so this is like new work that would have happened. And then I think the other question is, and this is probably a little bit more Odesk specific, if you are a software developer in Silicon Valley, and now you can take and potentially outsource some of the things that, writing boilerplate code or filling out expense reports or something like that, you can become more productive, which should in principle increase the demand for your labor, not decrease it. And so I think it's very easy to think of things in sort of a substitutes framing, but I think that this is a kind of labor that could actually be very complementary to kind of onshore work. But I would also admit that I think there's a lot of uncertainty about this, and these are kind of hard questions to answer.
So, John, you open with this analogy of like you're meeting with a friend and you don't know where and you can't talk, so you choose Grand Central. But so, to what extent do you see, I guess any of you see, communication between the two sides of the marketplace outside of the platform, and then they find each other on the platform? Like on Odesk, are there talks before they get onto Odesk?
I mean, very, very, very rare. I think that there are some. I think they built some features about sort of like bring your freelancer to the platform, but I mean, the reality is that most of these relationships are north-south. Sort of buyers in the U.S. and Europe, and hiring workers that are much more global. And so it's not like I have a friend in Bangladesh and I can say who's a good person for me to hire. Like it's more likely that the match is going to start through Odesk. If anything, it's probably more common that we make the match on Odesk and then go off to avoid the percentage fee.
Oh.
I would just add that I think one of the biggest surprises I've had running CrowdFlower is the number of companies that actually use it as a system to organize their own workforce. So this is where you actually have that employee relationship already, and then they use it to kind of organize everyone's responses to something.
Well, perfectly on time. Thank you very much.